All right, welcome back to Daybreak. I'm Victoria Rubadiri. Let's jump right into the newspaper review. Let me introduce my panel really quickly. To my far left is Omboko Milemba. He's the Emuhaya MP. Next to him is David Osiani. Chairman, I beg your pardon. I got the wrong brief.
You're no longer the MP.
You're no longer.
You are too.
Okay. We will make that correction. My apologies. Next to him is David Osiani, a political analyst, and Gabriel Muzuma. Thank you so much. Political analyst as well.
Thank you, Victoria, for having us on this rainy Friday morning.
Thank you. We're trying to bring some sunshine to our viewers this morning. The front pages, both of The Nation and The Standard, of course, talking about yesterday's event in Kisumu. President Uhuru Kenyatta making his way there finally. It was a long time coming. And finally making his way there, the front page of the Daily Nation saying, Uhuru, Raila, Ruto, lead show of unity. You can see a mammoth crowd there. I was talking earlier with Willis, and we said this is actually the mammoth crowd that we had been promised in other places. It was witnessed, finally, in Kisumu. Page 4 of the Daily Nation.
Victoria, do you want to be a politician?
No, I don't.
We send you to Emuhaya.
But you will have to fight me.
I'd have to fight you for that one. But let's get into this, because the president made some comments here yesterday, and he said we must examine whether the winner-takes-all approach to elections is a good or bad thing for the nation. We must then find ways to address it. And many trying to read into this and wondering whether he meant, are we going into a referendum? And changing how we do elections entirely because of having to accommodate certain individuals in government because they were not able to come in the last election. I'll begin with you, Gabriel.
You know, Victoria, this is a very good conversation we are having, and this is a very good conversation that the president started on. Is this the thing that will actually help us to have a platform where we do not fight after every election? Yeah. And, it's not the president starting it. This conversation was started by, Johannes and Krigler, who took us, to a route and told us, you guys, you need to talk. You need to have a very candid and honest conversation to find ways to ensure that you do not keep taking this country to the, annals of hell. Every time we, finish an election, it's almost like a given. 2007, 2008, we came very close, and you remember. 2017, it wasn't any better. We almost went that direction. So I think, this is a debate me and Osiani have had for a very long time. Is this the conversation we should be having? Among the brand promise that Jubilee had was, to have a stable nation, to have people living in peace, to have a conducive environment so that we can do all this, a myriad of things that we talk about, be it development, be it agriculture, be it universal health care. Everything that you're talking about is under a banner or under an umbrella of peace and tranquility, failure to which I think we'll be pressing a reset button after every 5 years. Victoria, is this something we want to be doing? I think this is a very good conversation to begin with. Let us keep talking. If this is the way to go, then so be it.
I mean, the question is, and like you're saying, every 5 years, will we need a handshake? Because this is the handshake politics playing out, right. David.
It is important that we first understand our country based on its culture. We have a country that appreciates its ethnicities or ethnic groups. But therein lies the problem, because at the citadel of all political interest lies tribe. Now, therefore, it means Kenyans think first of whether you speak my mother tongue. In fact, anytime you're able to converse, and this is a global fact, anytime you're able to converse with a person in their mother tongue, they appreciate you as one of their own.
Correct.
And so, that being the problem means there has to be consideration of that cultural fact in an election. Whenever an election happens as it did last year, the country automatically, and I hope this ends soon, automatically finds itself segregated along tribal lines. And so the people running in these, for the different parties in an election represent the tribal interests often and other economic interests. So you will see those who rally behind Raila, those who are saying over the years, we have been left behind, over the years, we have been thrown, out, over the years, we have just been kept on the periphery. Now, the question the president asks, and which I bet he knows the answer to, is, are we going to go into cycles of if Uhuru wins, and he had Ruto, then it is a Kalenjin Kikuyu affair, and all the other ethnicities are left out? And the answer is, it is not a good thing. So, what are we then going to do? Because it is not enough to have a handshake. It is not enough to go to Kisumu and to go to Bondo. It is not sufficient to just say that I am committed to it. I am glad that the president has said, I want to leave behind a country that's more cohesive and freed of the corruption menace. The desire to ensure a cohesive nation will be seen in institutionalizing that desire, in ensuring that there is a way in which a tribally fragmented country can still hold together and avoid the possibilities of havoc in 2017. And so, if a referendum be the solution, so be it. There are countries and nations world over where, because they are a parliamentary system of governance, and because there are various offices, it's not about the people, as had been intimated. No, it's not about ensuring you accommodate other people. Rather, you accommodate other tribal interests. I don't want to call it anything but that, because that's what it is. So that then the Maasai feel they have a stake in the government, and the Turkana feel that we are in the far-flung areas of this country, but we have a stake, and that the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu will not lord it over them. And that if Raila were to be president today, and Kalonzo, he is vice, assume they became in 2017, then the other sides of the country, the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin that were predominantly the support base of Jubilee, would not feel as if they have been left out. And the moment you appreciate people like that, it will be the first step towards ensuring that we conclusively deal with the tragedy of tribe.
Chairman Milemba, we see these pictures of, people celebrating these three individuals, hugs. We hear terminology like my elder brother coming from the president, referring to Raila Odinga. And many asking, did this handshake really bring healing? Did it heal the rifts that we saw? And this is not the first one that we've witnessed, at least in recent times. There was Kibaki and Raila, and many arguing that that did not heal the nation. In your view, is this enough, or was this another superficial political gesture?
Your last words are magical. These are superficial. It's an episode. It's an action that is supposed to contain the moments of the time. It's supposed to deal with the political situation. It's very good for us. It has done us very well. Because 2-3 days ago, I was in Burundi and South Africa, and I noticed in Burundi they are working in a system that is very difficult, because the losers and the winners have no time to accept that somebody lost and somebody won, and therefore it's a military state. So it's a good episode for us and for us to move forward. But it is not a panacea per se to the solutions that Kenya should be having in terms of political determination, because it is just a handshake then between a team of people. But I like my earlier contributors. We have 40-something tribes. So why wouldn't we then do a handshake with all the tribe moving around? And then even if we are moving forward to think of a referendum, that would bring then a situation whereby we have, after election, we don't have to fight who has lost or who has won. Then we have a structure whereby we are factoring every tribe in that particular political arrangement. And this is not the case. Here again, we shall still have other people arguing from the sidelines. And indeed, there are some dissenting voices saying that, hey, we haven't had a very good handshake like the one we have seen other people have. So I think for me, it is good for now, it's good for peace, but it's not a panacea for the political situation. What is the history of democracy? The Greeks themselves began it. Let's go to America. The winner takes it all. And then America, there's one time that they had a president whereby that president had gotten almost nothing in the South, which was basically slave, and the industrial North had picked it all. But America has survived and was one of the strongest democrats. Are we saying that we don't then need elections? And if we don't need elections, hey, It means we have to create an arrangement that will continuously govern this country without necessarily having an election. And what are we talking about? That's a dictatorial type of state. Thank you.
You know, yeah, you wanted to respond, David.
I think it needs to, however, be made clear. I do not want us to get stuck in this mess of tribe. I hope we are able to somehow ascend above it. The ideal state that I hope we achieve is a state where we will appreciate Omboko Milemba without caring what tribe he is from. That we will be able to appreciate Gabriel without caring which language he speaks. That when I stand anywhere in this country, everyone will be able to see right through me as a good Kenyan trying to serve the purpose of country. Because what it is, I've seen even the cries, the hue and cry about we were fired, our tribe is targeted, in which the president addressed. I know we will talk about that later. But when we even drive tribe into failure to perform or graft, then we are just a sinking nation. So the ideal state is that someday we are able to ascend above all that and see our political leaders as being human beings who are seeking to lead the country, and then vet them away from tribe, but based on their agenda for
I met Kalenjins, I met Kikuyus. I have never met somebody who wants to be identified by his nationalism. But while outside, well, you go outside the country, you meet Kenyans,
Yes.
all right? But when you come into this country, you meet all these other people, you know, who have subscribed to their tribal directories. So what he was saying is this: up until when we realize that we can have something called a nationalistic look, and we forget this indigenization, because everybody wants to be, defined by their tribal extraction. And so by doing that, you have politicians who use that as a vehicle. And they are very good at pointing, and this is how you win elections. They are very good at pointing you to who is the problem and who is to blame for your way of life. And I think if we get to a certain point, like what Mwalimu has alluded to, a jurisdiction like the United States, where you can have a president who comes from Texas and a brother who is a governor in Florida.
Right.
Same family. Why? It is because, he's my brother, he's somewhere in Moranga, Osiani, goes to Moranga to become a governor. It's almost unheard of. But until such time, I think and I pray, someday we will get there. Victoria, someday we'll get there, because we've started seeing it in, these smaller offices. You remember, there was a guy who was nicknamed Mechanic in Kaha West, you remember?
Yes.
He was voted in a place where, the dominant, was Kikuyu.
Yeah.
But he was from the Lakeside region. It is a very good sign if we start moving ourselves from the tribal directories. I hope, Osiani, one day we will get it right, because I believe therein lies our salvation.
Chairman, you wanted to say something?
I thought, as I concluded what I said, I should have also said that what we really need is a democracy that is accepting the elections, an election system that is actually acceptable.
Correct.
And has the confidence of the masses.
Yes.
So that when we go through an election, then we don't need a handshake. The loser accepts that, hey, you have lost. And the winner says, yes, I have won. But carries along the losers together with the winning team. That would be a more sufficient way to go.
It is like Omboko has just gotten into my head and thought of what I was saying. One, I want us to appreciate that belonging to our ethnic groups is not itself a problem. It's not a bad thing to be Luo. It's not a bad thing to be Kikuyu. It is only a bad thing if we parochially become our ethnicities, that it stops us from thinking out and thinking wide, so that then we reduce ourselves and the value of the human that we see to just tribe and forfeit everything else that's good about them. We need to know that it is okay, and I would love to appreciate the culture. After all, some of my best songs are Mogithi songs. It is all right to appreciate our ethnicities. However, if they reduce us to just pawns in the chessboards of these other characters called politicians, then it's a problem. However, finally, to give a ride to what Omboko Milemba has said, the only way that interests of various groups, whether it is ethnicities, whether it is the youth or whoever it is expressed, is an election.
Right.
An election must therefore be a credible process where, regardless of the winner or loser, there is the appreciation of the fact that the whole process was laser beam, honest, focused, ruthless, and above reproach. Until we get there, regardless of these mechanisms we put in place, we may even have a new election under a new referendum with a prime minister, with a president, with a deputy president. Yeah. But even as we do that, there will be alignments. So you will have an alignment that has all the tribes, but still there will be conflict because people will say, hang on a minute, my faction won, the other one didn't win. So as we resolve this, and I'm glad the president and the prime minister have started this, it's a wonderful thing they have done. As they do that, let them get to that building bridges document,
right,
because it also enlists resolving the electoral issue with a finality.
So moving away from the toxic ethnicity that we witnessed in this country is very necessary. But something else interesting happened yesterday, a comment by the Deputy President, William Ruto, saying, as you have seen, my two bosses have already spoken. What more can I, the hustler, add? And some wondering, was this a pecking order of sorts forming when you put President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila before, and he's the deputy president. Right. Raila has no formal position in government.
The president said he is in government.
And even, well, he has, on the word of Uhuru Kenyatta.
Right.
But even when the president was coming off of his plane, and the first person to greet him was Raila, and followed by Ruto. So, many wondering, does this now form a new pecking?
But there, Victoria, you know one thing you cannot do when you're looking. There are two ways you can look at it. You can be looking at it. One, as Jubilee, who formed government, but that does not discount Honorable Raila Odinga. And this is the reason for me to say this, for me to allude to that, was after President Uhuru, the person who had serious numbers was Raila Odinga. That you cannot take away from him, that you cannot discount from him. So he still has a lot of say when it comes to the people or the masses that he controls. So I think that in the political realm, I'm calling it the political realm because that's a different stage totally altogether, gives him actually a very good platform for him. If you're looking at pecking orders, he becomes actually number 2, right? If you are going by the people he controls. But now when you're coming to government, that's a new formation. You have the president, his deputy, and the other officers. So really, in the grand scheme of things, I know quite a lot of things were said in political undertones. My only problem is
number 1 in America.
Yes. My only problem is when those political undertones disappear. The real characters come out. So do not be shocked when you hear something so different in another political rally a few months from now.
No, I do not think that there are very many lenses that would look at that in a very diverse way. I think the only reason that order was like that is simply Raila was the host. Raila was the host in that part of the country. He was a very significant host. The opposer becomes friend, and in a hostile territory, you need to make the people in that part believe that truly our guy is as important. You hold him in high regard, is as important as we have thought you made him look.
Told me
so
it wasn't
just I don't think there is much reading to it. I think even the deputy president appreciates that under the circumstances following the hostilities and the ceasefire thereafter, there was a need to elevate Raila beyond his, just what you may want to think he is. And for that part of the country, he is their president. And you have to appreciate that fact that he says mkutano imekwisha, sio kama ile Bomet itakwisha. So that's it. Yeah.
Yes, Chairman.
Well, I think very nice question, and I think it's not really a question, but something to comment about. I think I found the deputy president a smart guy.
Yes.
He was a sharp guy. Maybe this is just a student of Ruto Vanderbar who has read about speeches. He knows we have hostile audience, and then we have moderate audience, and then we have friendly audience.
Correct.
And he looked around and knew that he must navigate through the speeches he do during that particular day, which was yesterday. And that was the correct thing to do for him also to survive.
Yes.
And again, all eyes were set to him, because he was being looked at, is he handshake or is he opposing it? So I think he did the very correct thing at the correct time in order to give the day a blessings. But I must agree with the senior here that Raila controls a massive crowd in terms of population. But that does not elevate him to be number 2 or number 1 in government. And that's why when you were speaking, I just jogged about it, that look at the American situation.
No, I'm not. I did not say government. No. I said in the political realm.
I withdraw, allow me to continue.
Oh, please, go ahead. Yeah.
Because when you look at the American situation, whereby we saw Hillary get Ghana the majority in terms of numbers, she can never come up and then claim that, all right, I got the numbers, so it is this and this. But finally, as I conclude, I think the deputy president won yesterday because he took the correct cue he was supposed to take for it. And I must congratulate him for one thing. He was pretty brave to go and actually face that particular crowd. Thank you.
No, I think on the deputy president, the greatest lesson learned yesterday, because at some point I had the people boo the deputy president, and he smartly, agreeably, he smartly navigated from hostility to moderacy. But the greatest lesson that I bet we ought to have all learned yesterday is that disagreements ought to be decent.
Yes.
Even as you go into elections, we are bound to disagree. Humans, by their very nature, socialized differently, nurtured and natured very differently, are bound to disagree even when they're in love and they get married. But when you disagree, there has to be decency in disagreement. And the greatest thing is that the response in Kisumu, the murmurs and the anger was much more about how the deputy president may have handled himself before elections. Because I remember Raila differed with Daniel Toroi teacher at Moi, but he still had the good sense to respect age and be decent in their disagreement and not hurl insults. And once you do that, if you're able to be decent in your disagreement, then it doesn't matter. Tomorrow, when we get into elections, then out of it, we will all agree, okay, that was a hard time, we disagreed, but here we are. And when there is an opportunity to genuinely apologize, let the people see through you and discern that you are so honest and genuine about what you're saying, that you're truly sorry and they should not expect that again.
Okay, just before we move away from the handshake politics, there was an interesting observation here by Macharia Gaido about the deputy president. And he said the scenario now is that Mr. Ruto effectively controls the Jubilee parliamentary group with the numbers to frustrate the president's legislative agenda. Kenya may well see in coming months President Kenyatta having to rely on Mr. Odinga's opposition MPs to push through his programs in parliament while his own Jubilee MPs remain indifferent.
That's a dream.
Let me get your take on that, Gabriel.
Well, I knew Osiadu would say something.
No, you should have started with the parliamentarian.
No, let me hear what they have to say, because I'm listening to this with my third ear. Yes.
By the way, honestly, apart from very few bills that have come through Parliament, has the Jubilee administration, I'm calling it Jubilee administration because we all still remember about the tyranny.
Odili. ODM and Jubilee combined.
Now he said Odili.
Right?
There are several things that they've actually come together to support, even through the Senate and also in Parliament. For instance, you saw how they came together in the Roraka report, land report in the Senate. In fact, majority of the people who ran away from that report were Jubilee. So that kind of tells you there could be something cooking. And what I would like really is for our brothers and sisters who are in parliament to be very content oriented, because let's just shy away just a little bit from everything that we've been told, from the spilling of water in parliament. Forget all that. From the nonsensical taking of 10,000 shillings to do a sugar report. Let's forget about that for 1 minute. Let us concentrate on the content. What are we delivering to Wanjiku? And I think, people have been saying about a house divided, whatever that means. If we are true to self and content become the guiding principle, it does not matter which divide you belong. What will matter at the end of the day, Mwalim, will be doing the right thing. Yeah. Victoria, that is what I would like our parliament, both the houses, to be able to do. Because the issue of, again, retreating back to your party lines and your party position, how is that different from what somebody has said? Every time we have an election, we retreat back to our tribal cocons. How is that different? When you know you need to do the right thing, but then you have to do what your head of party, not only the head of party, your majority leader says. Are we saying we are following robotic instructions when we come to parliament? I think it is a good thing when we have this colloquial word that Osiani has come in. What are you calling it again? Jubilee and code?
Odili.
If Odili is going to give us content that is true to Wanjiku, oh my goodness. We are going to have in fact, it will be like a new country order. Not a new world order, it will be like a new country order.
Okay. Unless something has changed with and about most of the characters in that parliament, with due respect to
I'm one of them here.
Mheshimiwa Omboko and myself, who is going there soon.
Oh, you're going to parliament?
I am telling you, the president wields absolute power in this country. You cannot tell me anyone can undermine the president and undermine what the president wants done on the floor of the House.
They rejected Chumo. They rejected Chumo.
That's fine.
Unanimously.
Because the president did not want him.
But the president put the name.
And because the president put the name, and I think it just hit the wall. He realized, oh my God, why didn't you guys tell me? This character is as damn corrupt as he is. If he had stuck his neck out for Chumo, I guarantee you, Chumo went home because Uhuru reflected, said, man, I made a mistake in this appointment and this.
You're forgetting.
Listen to me.
I'm just telling you.
I guarantee you that whereas I respect that the deputy president wields absolute power, and I mean, what do you expect in a parliament where people can take 10,000 shillings? The deputy can offer much more.
There you go.
I can promise you that unless it is in their own interest, like salaries, that's why they rejected Sarah Saram, and that's why they had a problem. That's why they had a problem with Monica Juma, because they could not go for the loot at the Interior Ministry every other time. Unless it is of their own interest, there is no one who can run over the president. That the president comes tomorrow and says, I have a list of new ministers, and you try to frustrate it on the floor of the House, I tell you, you will flop. You will flop if it is entirely driven by politics and being undermined by his deputy. I don't want to envisage that situation. I hope it does not occur. All right? The president as is, hey, my God, you guys, are you high on something illicit? The president wields absolute power. Did you see the passing of the financial bill? What happened? Where the women rep from Narok would just stand and say, even when the nays have it, yes, the ayes have it, and is it a bill or not? It is assented to as a law today. And there was 8% increase on the fuel levy.
Thank you. I must make a comment on this, but I must capture two items from my colleagues here. Number one is the content. Very well spoken. Yes. Because if the new terminology we have acquired here, Odili and any other, if we go for content in parliament, and I realize that if parliamentarians will stick on content, we can deliver very good laws.
Totally.
And to stick on content, it requires a lot of research, reading. It's a terrible place. In fact, if it's a place you go and you are unable to research, then you'll not carry what my colleague here calls content. So if we go that direction, we shall deliver very good laws. But on the other side is the interest. So I only capture one item from my colleague next to me here, interest. Interest sometimes and many a times do override even the need for content and the need for everything else. And therefore the most important policies are determined by interests. And that's where then it comes to what you have asked and what I want to deal with, that if the Deputy President is controlling Parliament, would he be a challenge for Odili, and therefore the D part of it must assist in order to pass the laws? One, we must thank the handshake, because with the handshake, before the handshake, nothing good could even go through so long as it came from the opposition. But now people are level-headed and they can actually stand with content and actually even make good laws for this particular country. So the handshake was pretty good because people are independently thinking. But at the same time, it has allowed even the members of parliament from the Jubilee side to also become part of the opposition. But when it comes to interest, which is the most important thing.
Like salaries.
When it comes to interest, the members of parliament will actually stand with the interest, because there's also a house of interest. You go to parliament because you have an interest, the interest of your people, the interest of your constituency, and so on and so forth. And therefore, at that particular level, you will find that the president, if he has to go over parliament, he really needs the ODM. And a very good example given was the finance bill. The finance bill would have not gone through unless brother, leader of minority, Mbadi, stood with it strongly. And you remember, by the time it was being passed, they were all hooded in one corner and just with brother Ndwale doing a jig, so singing for it to go through. So again, the power of the president cannot be gainsaid, because there are times when the house is muzzled, like the finance bill was just muzzled through parliament. The speaker was told, go down there, deliver this law and bring it to me. He went down there. The way of going about it did not matter. He delivered it, took to the president, and it was signed, and it's law. Today, as we talk, the trade unions are now struggling with, what do we do with the housing scheme? I was telling them yesterday, trade unionists, you must never depend on the judiciary. Don't depend on the executive. Don't depend on the parliament. You have your own area. You can move these things on your own. At one time, even the trade union movement has been stronger than the opposition. So let them take the housing policy head on, so that the workers do not lose their money in a scheme that is not very good.
I am itching to say, opposition and even interests must be objective. If you go to oppose just because you think that by opposing a bill or anything that goes on the floor of the House, what you're trying to do is to exude who is over the other in terms of emasculating the power within Parliament, then that's not an objective opposition. That's why I really love what Musalia Mudavadi is doing. Objective opposition. He is not, you know, he is objective about opposing what's going on. He explains what it is he opposes. He explains alternatives for those things he opposes. But if interests that are merely political and not the interest of the electorate that we are sent to go and represent in Parliament override the interests of the electorate, if at all, for example, the president were to try and do something that's good for the electorate, and then interests like 2022 wants to come to play in the floor of the House, then I think we as the electorates must be standing by guard by Parliament and waiting for each one of them as they come. You know, out every one of them into the bin. Moja kwa moja, go into the bin. Because unless and until we do that, because that's what Yugoslavia did, unless and until we are objective, and it's a call to the parliamentarians out there. I like the few of them, like my brother here, Omboko, who have said and remain, are on record as trying to fend for the interests of their people. But there is no explanation for those who take 10,000 shillings and are disappointing, or those who just want to say, how high shall we jump for nothing's sake, just to try and get into the political contest ahead of 2022. The interests of the Kenyan electorate must override every other interest, personal or political.
And we'll see when that actually happens in this country.
But still, let me tell you, the president still does not hold the crazy wielding powers that you're talking about. And that is why the president has vetoing powers.
Yes.
You know why? Because there are bills that will, crazy bills that will, it will come to the House of the
Like the salaries one.
Of course. And the president will
Mheshimiwa,
stand up
did
and
you
say,
vote
you know
for
what, I have to veto this.
A man of salaries.
You paused. Took a while to answer that.
Salaries and salaries and salaries. I'm a man of salaries. Okay, so I don't think you need to go there.
That's a smart one. That's a smart way of running away from saying yes.
Gabriel, you've been totally derailed by the man of salaries.
No, I was answering too young.
Literally, that's what I've been doing all along.
Seeking salaries and salaries. Why
And
not
it's funny that these two people will be in parliament. So, I hope the electorate, are watching when they come in. Remember what they will be talking about. They will be pitching for their salaries.
Yeah, we'll hold
but
them
the fact of the matter remains. That is why, albeit the fact that Osiani can say the president has absolute powers when things, come to parliament. Sometimes even parliamentarians can have a life of their own, and most of the time they can run with something that the president is not happy with, and that's why the president has vetoing powers. So, sometimes you can say, he has absolute, but still, I think it's good to have.
What I know is that no one can undermine the president.
And that I agree with you.
And walk into that parliament knowing they are from Jubilee.
And try and push their own agenda.
And just go and push their own agenda, even after. It's one thing before the president warns you and says, Chief, this is it. Objectively, this is what I want to do for country, and this is where we are going. And after that, still walk to parliament.
A small interjection. We saw them stand out strongly and go against the president's wish, especially a few of them on the finance bill, and they spoke loudly, and all Kenyans saw them. So I don't want you to carry the feelings.
I agree. At that point, you must understand there were two groups.
Those who are very strong. They rise up and say no.
Even in those opposing the bill, I opposed the bill myself. I thought that it was as a hit on the pockets of the Kenyan. That's fine, but you must agree with me that even then, those who opposed, who were from the president's backyard. Most of them did not oppose it just because of the electorate. They opposed it because of the political undergoings and undercurrents that were going on at the time. I mean, we are not fools to know that there was a saboteur in that process who just wanted not to depict, he didn't do it for Kenya. He did it because he thought that he wants to try and undermine the president. And that is why sometimes...
That would be another angle to determine why they opposed. But what we know, and I went on record, is that they opposed.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Motive, though.
The motive, those are details. I don't know if
motive notwithstanding.
They opposed.
Okay, on that note, let's take a short break. Much more to discuss on Daybreak. We'll be right back.